Hi everyone. So I'm gonna be talking about interviews. I know it's a very hot topic. We've been giving a lot of feedback on this. So I will try making this as interactive as possible. In case if you do have questions, please bring them up while we are going through the presentation because it's important to tap on those while I'm talking about it. So I have actually divided this entire presentation into three parts. We are going to be talking about things that you do before the interview, while basically like during the interview and after the interview. A quick side note, I might have a couple of recruiters joining this conversation today just to give you all their perspective on what you should be keeping in mind as interviewees. So they might join in for like a couple of minutes to talk about their experience as recruiters. Please make sure that y'all are asking as many questions as possible because this is the time when most of y'all will be interviewing. So let's get started. So first is talking about before the interview. Anyone from this present meeting, can anyone tell me what do y'all do before the interview? While y'all are going to go for the interview, what do y'all do? Anyone? Anyone? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, so anyone can say something,
I can research about the company as well as the position.
right? That's one thing, yes. What else?
I would research more about the person who is going to interview me if I know that in advance, what position he is in, what he is doing, and would love to connect with him before interview on LinkedIn and ask few questions there before going into the interview if the person on the other end is responsive.
Yeah.
And I had couple of interviews in last 2 months, and this strategy have helped me a lot, like reaching out to the person who is actually going to interview you.
Yeah, that's a really good strategy. Yes. So it is very, very important that we do a lot of research about the company and the person interviewing us. But right before that, it is very important to make sure that we are preparing ourselves for the interview. So, one way of doing that is through this analysis called SWOT, which basically helps you think about what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are some of the opportunities that you want from this position, and then can everyone please be on mute? um okay, and then the last thing is some of the threats. So why we do this is to make sure that we have adequate information about ourselves when recruiters ask us introductory questions. I did get a couple of questions in the Google form about how do we answer a question on tell me something about your weaknesses, and this basic model will help you actually answer those questions. Now, how do you actually structure this is something that we'll talk about, but this is very important to do right before your interview so that you know that these are the points that you're supposed to hit on. So for example, in strengths, you can write like I'm a good multitasker, right? So that could be a strength. In your area of development, which is basically your weakness, you can write about I am not good with time management. These are just examples, but that's how you can form your list. um, which then actually brings me to the question I asked y'all earlier about what do y'all do right before the interview. Now, it is very important to research about the company 100%. That should be a priority. You should know what the company is doing, what are their products and services, if they have been in the news recently for XYZ reasons. You need to check out their LinkedIn profile. So, like someone mentioned, researching on the recruiter, but also going through the company's LinkedIn page, seeing the kind of articles they are sharing, seeing what they are currently interested in. Are they doing something very specific in your field? So, those things can help you actually answer your questions more strongly, more concretely, because you have research backing that up. So, it's very important to check even the business page on the link on LinkedIn. Next is having your SWOT analysis, so thing that we just spoke about. Making sure that you are writing down your strengths, areas of development, the opportunities that you want to get through this position, and some things that may hinder that opportunity. So it could be like, well, I am not good in this particular aspect, which may make it very troublesome for me. So through this company's thing, I want to make sure that I am um, I am working on it. So basically doing that SWOT analysis. Next is preparing your elevator pitch. Now, everyone who might have attended the LinkedIn event, I spoke about how to prepare your elevator pitch. It's very, 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 very important. I cannot stress enough on this. You need to have your elevator pitch. For example, right now, if there's a recruiter who comes into this conversation and says, hey, I have a position open, can one of you all like interview for it? You need to have your elevator pitch ready in order for you to sell your skills immediately, right? So an elevator pitch is very important. If you missed out on the LinkedIn event, you can always go back to the YouTube channel and listen to it, because that's where I have broken it down into steps as to how you can prepare your elevator pitch. Then is studying the job description. Extremely important. If you don't know what you're applying for, there is no way you are going to land that job. There is no way. I am saying this from my personal experience. When I have been recruiting individuals, they do not know what's written in the job, and that's when we interview them, they are a kind of a little confused. They don't read the job description thoroughly. It is very important that you actually know what the recruiter is looking for from that job description. So it could be as small as, maybe the job position is like a night shift position, right? So you need to know that it was a night shift position and not go in with that assumption that, oh, I'm going to do this job in the day, right? So it's very, very important to understand the job description. Next, know your resume, guys. It's very important. A lot of people make this common mistake that they do not remember what they've written in their resume. So when the recruiter asks you a question like, walk me through your resume, you need to know what you've written. You need to know what kind of experiences you've mentioned. You need to know the numbers that you have mentioned. You cannot say, I managed a group of 100 people, when in your resume you've written you've managed only 20 people. So it's very important that you know your resume, and that you know when when you're answering those questions, how you are going to connect your resume to your answers. Now, how you do it, we'll talk about that, but this is just a gist of it. And the next is prepare questions to ask. Very, very common mistake that interviewees make is when they do not ask questions to the recruiters or hiring manager. Why you should be asking them questions? It shows your interest, as how much you're interested in this position, how much you want to actually work for this company, how interested or passionate are you about this role. So ask questions. What kind of questions to ask is something that I'm going to cover in the presentation, and those are just generic questions, but we'll talk about it. Does anyone have any questions so far, or any thoughts? Quickly, like a couple of them. No, yes, maybe. Okay. I'm going to take that as a no and move forward. So, going to your elevator pitch, as I mentioned in my LinkedIn, I have mentioned about how you can actually make an elevator pitch. But to quickly glance over it, in your elevator pitch, you need to write who you are and what you do. Basically, not writing, hi, my name is Darshita Shah and I do this, but writing it more of like in a flowery language, saying like, I'm a recent graduate from XYZ University in masters in XYZ field. So like that. Why should the company care about you? Like, why is it important for the company to bring you in? So what sets you apart from everyone else? So that could be basically, um, I would say, stressing on your strengths, right? So saying, I am super detail oriented and very creative, which is going to be an advantage to the team, right? So that could be, why should the company care for you? And what do you want? Like, why are you even wanting to be a part of this team? What is it going to do for you? So writing about, I believe that I can use my strengths to the fullest in this team. I can gain more experience. I can also develop my skills further with the team and the projects I'll be handling. So kind of making it more comprehensive. Um, and then I think I did see something on in the chat. Sorry. Okay. The next one is something that has helped me personally, and all the recruiters that I have spoken to have also said this, that this really helps. Now this might sound like a very dumb technique to a lot of y'all, which is okay. It sounded dumb to me in the start as well, but it's very very important that you do this. Like, you really need to be calm during the interview. If you are very worked up, if you're not confident, it's not going to help. Yeah. Before I actually go into the breathing technique, I'm going to stop here for a minute and actually have Aaron, who's actually a recruiter who's worked in the industry for a lot of years, has joined the conversation. So, just for a minute, I'm going to stop my screen share and welcome Aaron. He is here to just talk a little bit more about some of the tips that you should be keeping in mind from a recruiter's perspective, because he's recruited across industries. So, hey, Aaron, thank you for dropping in. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? Like Darshita said, my name's Aaron. I've had a little bit experience with recruiting and interviewing, so I'm going to share some tips to interview a little bit better. So the first is being yourself, but it's important to be the best version of yourself while interviewing. So that's kind of why you dress up nice. When you're virtually interviewing, it's important to still dress up nice. I know a lot of times, like right now, I'm in a sweatshirt. That would not be appropriate for an interview. So be yourself, but be the best version of yourself. Another thing you can do when interviewing is smile. Interviews sometimes can be stressful for both parties. So smiling helps make it a little more light and airy, because after all, you're just trying to get to know the company, or trying to get to know the interviewees, and you're trying to just be the best version of yourself. And oftentimes that helps when smiling. Um, when asked about specific situations in interviewing, so when they ask for, please tell me about a time where you were stressed out and how did you handle it, it's important to speak with specific examples, um, and don't talk in hyperbole. So when I would be interviewing people, and they would say, oh, I would like to do this in this situation. Speak about very specific things that you actually did when you were in those situations. When asked with behavioral questions, a lot of times the answers are given to you in the job description. So in the job description, they may ask for communication, they may ask for leadership. So that's a giveaway that you're probably going to be asked about that in the interview. So be prepared for those kind of questions. Go through the job description. Um, Oftentimes when you are interviewed, you will be asked a question that you're maybe not prepared for, and you may not actually know the answer. That is okay. When you're asked a question, you may not know the answer. Pause for about 30 seconds, really think about it. Um, Something you probably don't want to do is just, if you don't know the answer, say you don't know the answer. So think about it, walk through your thought process. If you can't answer the question, give them as much info as you can. So I understand a lot of you are coming from STEM fields. So a typical question that you'd be asked is to give a product and reverse engineer it. Typically saying I don't know wouldn't be the best way to go about it. So say first I would talk to the manager, ask this question. Then I would go and ask this question. Then I would do this. So kind of just walk them through your thought process, because they're more interested in how you work rather than the answer. And like I mentioned, a lot of you are coming from STEM fields. In the interview, if you get an interview, you've already been deemed a solid candidate. So have a little confidence. This is your time to communicate, and communicate well. That's kind of what they're trying to figure out. They're trying to figure out if you are a fit for the organization, if you are a fit for the team. So this is a time where you can be your best self, communicate, make eye contact. And then the final thing that I would recommend when you're interviewing, most times they'll give you a few names that will be interviewing you. Do your research, look up the company, go on LinkedIn, look up the people. Um, it's not like dating. You're not trying to play hard to get. You're trying to make it very clear that you want to work at this organization and make it very clear that you're excited. You're very looking forward to everything. And those are some tips that I have for you. Um, and I don't know if you have any questions for me. Um, but other than that, I will pass it back to Darshita if there are no questions.
Anyone have any question? They can unmute yourself and ask.
So I just have one clarification. Like, so from the perspective, like I understood that it is not a good idea to say no, like directly straight away no to if you don't know. Like you should try answering. That is what I understood. But suppose we are 100%, we are not sure about, like we don't know like what it is, and we are 100% sure that we don't know this particular answer. Then how should we reply? Like we know that we are, or we have to make some story about it, like which won't be like, suppose they are asking you something which you don't even understand, then how should we go with the answer for those particular kind of questions?
So very good question. Uh, it's important to ask clarifying questions. So if you're confused with the question and you're confused with their verbiage, it's completely appropriate to ask for clarifying questions. I know when working with Darshita, she asked me a very difficult question, and I had to ask 3 or 4 clarifying questions. And that's actually what Darshita was looking for. She was looking to see that you're not just going to throw an answer out. So look for clarifying questions. If you still don't understand or know the question, do your best to answer it. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for clarifying. Looking for you to do your best to answer your thought process, what you do, because we wouldn't want you to just make up an answer. That's probably not going to work too well. So ask clarifying questions. Walk your interviewee through your thought process. They're just trying to get to know how you work. And yeah.
Thank you, that is helpful.
I have a question. Hi, Aaron. Thank you so much for the advice. I noticed you said that it's good to research about the interviewers on LinkedIn or anywhere you can find. So I just wanted to ask, is it advisable to send a personalized connection request, or is that too pushy?
It's up to you. I know I normally send just a LinkedIn request before, but it's completely up to you. I would say at the bare minimum, you at least want to look at their LinkedIn profile. So if you're feeling like it's a little too pushy, because as you know on LinkedIn, when you view someone's profile, they get a notification that you viewed their profile. So I'd say at the minimum, you'd want to just look at their profile.
Right.
I always go a little bit farther and I look to see if there's on any other social medias. So I look on Facebook, I look on Instagram, and that's something you can do to kind of figure out if there's something they really like or they're really into. I know we have a colleague who's very into food. So that was something I wanted to make sure to incorporate some sort of information into my interview about food because it resonates with that person.
That makes sense. Thank you.
So just want to ask, is that a Packers jersey?
It is. It is. I am
All
a
the
big
best.
Packer fan.
All the best to you today. So can we ask this off-topic questions to an interviewer?
No. Typically in the interview, you want to be as professional as possible. So the thing is, you want it to be light, you want it to be airy, but you also want it to be professional. You want to be putting forward your best self. That's why I wouldn't recommend to wear a Packers sweatshirt for an interview. For me, I always wear a dress shirt, tie. In person, I normally wear a suit. Online, I've been going back and forth just because the way my chair sits makes my suit kind of sit funny. So it's whatever you wanted to feel most comfortable in. But yeah, towards the end, when they ask you for questions, unless they've made it very, very clear that they want to talk about the Packers, I would probably err on not talking about those sort of things.
Hey Aaron, hi, this is Harshal. And first of all, thanks for taking out your time on this Saturday morning and sharing your knowledge. Appreciate that. I have this question. Sometimes during the final interviews, on-site interviews, the whole panel take you for the lunch interview. We just have the lunch and stuff. But during that lunch interview, I don't know what are they actually looking to find out about the person. What are they actually? I mean, what are they looking for? Looking to find out? Okay, this person is a good match, or are they just want? They looking for okay whether this person have any additional knowledge to share about the position or something. What are they actually looking for?
I think when you get invited to a lunch interview, you're pretty far along in the process. So what they're kind of looking for is to see if your personalities are matching with their team. So they're trying to see if you're a good fit. They're trying to make sure that you can be professional, but also be relatable. I know that sounds kind of difficult to do, but if they a lot of times in the interviews, they'll try to make it clear what they're looking for. So when you're interviewing with people and there's very, very strict questions, they're looking for you to be very, very professional. If they're kind of making jokes here and there, they're looking for you to like laugh and smile and have a good time. So it's sort of just reading the situation. Most times, if you're that far along in the interview process, you are more than likely doing quite well. So I would continue doing what you're already doing. You already got past the first few rounds. So just
Mhm.
continue being yourself.
Okay, because I have this personal experience where uh, I'm in a group with them and they just start talking about maybe golf or something where golf is completely out of my books. So I would just be sitting around there. I won't have any clue what are they talking about. I just nod my head and they'll know he's just nodding. I'm just nodding my head to be there, but I don't know. I cannot break them off. I just nod my head. So is there anything else that I can do to get into the conversation or let them come in my playground and have a talk? Is there anything else which you would suggest me to do?
So it's very common for them to talk about topics maybe you're not super familiar with. And I know when someone asks me about a topic that I'm not familiar with, and you know it's not very heavily related to the job, it's just they're just trying to figure out your interests. You can just acknowledge and say, I have no idea anything about cars. And they'll laugh and kind of move forward with it. And they'll say, but I'm more interested in X, Y, and Z. There's some of the hobbies that I do. If you can find some sort of relation, um, be like, I'm not really big into cars, but I'm really, really big into food, or I'm really, really big into this. So they're just trying to feel you out and try and see if there's something that maybe you can relate with them, or you could even ask, um, what they like to do. So if they're asking you all these questions of what do you like to do, what do you like to do, and you can answer some, and then you can ask them in return, what are some interests that maybe you have.
Mhm. Right. Yep.
Can I
Okay.
just quickly add a point there? I think that was Harshal who asked that question. So just to add to Aaron's point, these rounds of interviews are more so like icebreaker interviews. They are looking to see who you are as a person and whether you're actually fitting in with the team, because they see and know the personality of the people who are already working there. So there is no right or wrong answers to such kind of situations. It's more so about how open you are, how honest you are, how accepting you are. It's more so about, can you fit in with the team moving forward.
I
um,
agree.
so think of those questions as you building a rapport with the recruiter, because the recruiter basically is a, I would say, like the first impression of how the organization's culture is, how the organization's individuals work and function. So there's no right or wrong answers to those kind of questions.
Oh,
Does that help more?
yeah, that does. Thank you.
Okay. So I know there are like a lot of great questions coming in, but for also the interest of time, I would like to introduce you all to another recruiter who's joined us. Uh, I don't know how to pronounce his Taiwanese name, so I'm not gonna try. But his name is Peter. He's right here with us too. Aaron and Peter work really closely. We all actually work really closely. So here he is. So he's another recruiter who can give you all tips, and y'all can ask him questions as well, while Aaron can still be on the call. So Peter, right to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Peter. I'm also a PhD BP IO student working with Darshita and Aaron. I have some experience in consulting. I've worked with a lot of nonprofits here in Chicago, and I've also worked with a environmental engineering consulting firm where I was the intern to redesign their training programs. And over there, I worked a lot with the project managers, the engineers. I've also done training projects with construction foremen. And to do that, I had to do a lot of interviews with a lot of um, frankly, older people that had decades of experience more than I did. And going through that process was very difficult, but I also learned a lot of skills in interviewing and how to phrase my questions, responses properly to fit the situation.
If you all have any questions for Peter, and I'm sorry, but there's Yaira also, who's another recruiter who's joined in. So great, all of you all joined in together. So that's awesome. Hey Yaira, it would be great if you could please switch on your video cam so that we could all see you. Awesome. So that's Yaira. She's also another recruiter who has worked as a recruiter in the past and has a lot of experience. So you all can shoot as many questions as you want to all these three recruiters before they like jump off the meeting. So we have like 5 minutes, maybe 5 to 6 minutes to actually ask them questions, and they can quickly answer. So anyone. Anyone has any questions for these recruiters?
Sorry, I wasn't able to unmute myself. Hi. Uh, I think I think Aaron also, most of the people asked Aaron questions, and I think most of them answered even some of the doubts I had. But how about, would you say, job interviews versus internship interviews? I've heard that internships are more difficult to get into. Is it sort of the interview process is difficult, or any suggestions or any help into that would be, is how should I prepare differently for an interview, for an internship versus a job?
Was that question directed towards me or any of us?
Any of you, I mean.
Okay, I'll pass it over to Yaira or Peter just because I've been answering a lot of questions. I want to make sure they get a chance to speak.
Sure. So for internship and jobs, they're pretty similar because in both of them, you basically have to talk about your experiences. But I feel like for more internships, it's kind of not as strict as job, where it's like for internship, it's okay if you don't have experience. And so you could talk about like volunteer stuff that you've done, extracurricular activities, or things you're learning in school. But I feel like most of the time when you're going for jobs, they want like people with more experience and people who have experience directly in the field. But also, if you don't have experience, you should be able to talk about like things you've done in the past that could apply to the job. So for both, you could talk about transferable skills, but I'll say the main difference is for internship, usually they don't really mind if you have experience or not, because obviously most of the time they know like this might be your first role, or this might be your jump into the field, or like an opportunity for you to just gain more experience. So for both, either way, for both, just try to relate it to as much experience as you have, answer the questions as much as, like if you don't have experience, you don't need to necessarily say you don't have experience, just try to find things that you've done as similar to, and focus more on the skills that you've gained in those previous experiences that you've had. Hope that helps.
Oh yeah, sure. Thank you. I mean, it's easier now that I can relate it to more I understand is that I have to relate more towards activities I did in school versus experience if I get in an internship. That helps a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. And also, like, even if you like, you could still apply for internships, even if you have a little bit of experience. So you can still talk about those experiences, because sometimes people like do multiple internships, and so they have experience in the field, and so you can still talk and still open to that. And even if you go apply for a job, you can talk about like your internship experience to help you get the job.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If there's no other questions, I quickly had another question to be thrown out there. What do you do when you do not get interviews after you've applied to jobs? Like, is there anything specific they should keep in mind while they're applying for jobs?
I could take that question too, and then if anyone wants to add to it, they could. Also network, find other avenues. So if you're applying to jobs, try to like diversify your searches. So I know a lot of people use like LinkedIn and Indeed, and that's the main sources they use to apply to job. Try to find other places, because there's so many platforms where people recruit from. So go look on like ZipRecruiter. Sometimes they're like tech specific ones, or like things related to a specific field. Like I've seen job boards specific for like startup companies, small companies, corporate companies. So try to like find those avenues, because not many people are thinking about them, but when people are recruiting, they still use different ways to find people. So try to diversify how you're applying for jobs. And then on LinkedIn network, like reach out to people, try to have like informational interviews so that they could tell you about the jobs or like their company or something, so that if like a job opens up in their company, they are able to keep you in mind for that position. And then they're like, if you look on like Eventbrite or like meetups, sometimes they're like associations that like post jobs too. So search for different associations that exist in your field, and then go to their meetings, because in those meetings people come and promote the jobs in their company. So that's another avenue to like network and hear about different jobs that you might not hear about on Indeed. And it's easier because usually when somebody comes to associations to recruit, they have like their email, and they're like, oh, email me. And so it's easier to like get directly in front of a recruiter that way. So that's another way. But yeah, reach out to people on LinkedIn, reach out to your network, and go to different events and meetings.
Yeah, and to add to that, sometimes when I don't get follow-ups about the interviews, I email the recruiters that I was scheduled to meet with and ask them follow-up questions like what was not fitting for me as a candidate for this position, and use that to find different positions that maybe I am stronger for, or ask them also, do you know of any similar positions that you're hiring for? Are there other positions in your company or outside that you know of? You can also ask, could you refer me to somebody else who are also looking for similar candidates? And maybe you'll find new connections, new recruiters, new opportunities that you didn't know of before. You could also ask if they are looking for less formal experiences, or more specifically internships, volunteering opportunities in their company that could eventually help you find a full-time job after gaining some experience as an intern, a volunteer, or just somebody that's always there to help. And they'll understand how strong of a candidate you are, that you can handle the job properly, and eventually you will find something there.
I think Jagrati wanted to add something quickly before anyone else throws a question out there. So, Jagrati.
Hey, hi guys, Jagruti Bilani here. I agree with Yaira's point. I'm sorry for the wrong pronunciation, but yeah, networking definitely helps. Even if you are an internship, you have to keep in mind that you do connect with recruiters in that company. Because what happens, like it happened with me actually. I was in Ericsson as an intern. So I used to go to all the events, like whatever meetups they used to have, lunches, dinners, some games, or any social event or any technical event. So they were having women in tech event at Ericsson. So I joined with lot of recruiters over there, and they, as an intern, they will definitely help you if you go and tell them like I'm interning in this company for this period of time, and I would definitely look forward to get a better opportunity so that I can work full time over here in this field. So they will definitely remember your face, and they will connect you on their internal Slack channel or any messenger that they are using, and they will contact you in like saying that yeah, we have these openings, and I know that you are good intern, so can you apply for this? So this definitely helps, and I got my first full-time job through this kind of technique. And yeah, that is my advice. And I will also agree with Aaron by saying that being honest. So when currently I'm working at Apple, so being honest is the key, because if you don't know the answer, just say no, I'm not aware of this thing or this field. So they will definitely understand, but I will definitely learn about it once I go out. So you have to convey that you are ready to learn, and you are ready to explore new things. So for example, they asked me like in Apple, like it's obvious that they will expect the person should use Apple products or something like that. So I was using Android mobile. So every, like I had 10 to 12 interview rounds, and every person in the interview, the interviewer, they asked me like, which product of Apple do you use? And I had no experience with Apple products till that time. So I just said, no, I do not have any product from the Apple, but yeah, I will definitely buy it once I get this job. So that helped because I was being honest at that time. You can't fake it, they will catch you in a moment. So just be honest. If you don't know anything, just say no. And that's it. Thank you so much. Over to you, Darshita.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing, Jagrati. One last question before we can actually have these recruiters leave. I know Chintan raised his hand. So, Chintan, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. So, how important is it to ask questions during the interview? And if the conversation is dropping dead, what can a candidate do to, ask certain questions so that the conversation goes on during the interview process?
Okay, quickly, I'll start it and then I can have the recruiters take it up. But I feel it is like from my recruiting experience, it is very important to ask questions just so that they know that you're equally interested in learning more about the company and about the position. When you don't ask questions, there is this underlining, I would say, impression that is created for most of the recruiters that this person thinks that he knows everything about the company, may not want to learn more about it, and I think already knows in his mind that he or she is a good fit to the organization. You may not know that. Remember this, as much as the recruiter needs you, you need the recruiter as well, right? So you're also interviewing the recruiter to find out if the organization is right for you, if that position is right for you, because the position may not mention every single detail about what you're going to do in day to day. So it's very, very important to also learn more about the company. So that's the reason why you should be asking a lot of questions. But to that, different perspective from these
Yeah, I'll agree with Darshita there. It is very important to ask questions. When I was interviewing for some intern positions as the recruiter, we definitely, I guess, deducted points for some of the candidates because they sat there smiling when we asked them, "Do you have any questions for us?" And they just said, "No, we don't have any questions." but we didn't tell them about what we're working on, who else is working on this project that's coming up. They just had no idea, and they were happy not knowing that or just unaware of what they were going into. And if we at that point decided to hire that person who didn't ask any questions, that meant that we had a person joining us that has no idea what's happening. They didn't know what they were going to work on, and they would just become more of a burden on the existing members of the organization because we had to spend more time teaching them, training them. So yeah, definitely ask questions as much as you can. I think one tip I would give is to write down a small list of questions you have when you, as Aaron and Ayara have mentioned before, when you look at the company information, when you look at the job position you're looking for, what kind of skills they're looking for, and you can ask questions like, okay, I see that you posted you want this particular skill or to have experience with this particular program. What are you expecting from me as a candidate to use these skills for? And what are you using these software, these programs on currently at the moment? What kind of projects are you working on that would make the best use of these skills and experiences? And that would really help them think about, oh, this person is very prepared, very knowledgeable about what we're looking for. So that may make this person stand out from the rest of the candidates.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yaira, Peter, Yaira, Aaron, anything more to add before we move forward?
No, I think you two pretty much covered everything. Like, it's important to ask questions. Try to think of questions beforehand. But also when you're doing the interview, sometimes questions come up and then at the end just ask. I know in my experience, like currently I am interviewing and I'm interviewing with my supervisor, and we literally have like 15 minutes where we are asking questions and then 15 minutes where we turn it to them to ask questions. And we definitely do expect to ask questions because it tells a lot about the candidates. And even being on the other side, I always ask questions, and I've literally had multiple recruiters say like that was one main thing that's made me stand out. And so I definitely think it's important to ask questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, everything that's said, I agree with. And you asked a question about if the interview is a little awkward, there's little silences here and there. Something I do is I don't wait till the end to ask all my questions. If there's something you're interested more about and they're talking about something, you feel free to ask that question during the beginning of the interview. This will make the flow a little bit better. Other than that, everything that's been mentioned before, perfect.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so I know we are also reaching time, so I want to make sure that I'm covering all the other information that I've mentioned in the presentation deck. But once again, thank you so much, Aaron, Peter, and Yaira, for dropping in. I know it was a little last minute for y'all, but thank you very, very much for taking the time to do this. But make sure you're connecting with them on LinkedIn. I can share their information, and you can reach out to them for any other questions you may have after we finished this presentation and going forward with it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. It was great meeting you all, and good luck. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. So I know that was like a lot of information right there, but I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And this is where actually the breathing technique is very, very helpful. Like, you need to calm down. You need to make sure that you're composed before your interview. And so this breathing technique has worked with me a lot. It is definitely something that you should be maybe taking into consideration if you're going for an interview that you're very anxious or nervous about. Especially these are like your final round interviews. So the next one is questions. Now, I have actually written down the most common questions that the recruiters do ask during interviews. This could be either through a virtual Zoom interview or a phone call interview. And I've broken these down into, broken these down into like three buckets, which is your introductory questions, your behavioral questions, and then company related questions. So, introductory questions are basically more about tell me about yourself. Can you walk me through your resume? What are your greatest strengths or areas of improvement? I did get a question on the Google form that said, how do you answer a question that asks, tell me about your weakness? Firstly, recruiters have usually, like, this is what I was talking to my roommate who's a recruiter too. And she had mentioned this, that weaknesses is I would say a word that recruiters have stopped using, right? So they would usually frame their question around by saying, can you tell me about areas of improvement or your developmental areas, which basically means your weaknesses. Now, whenever you're talking about your strength, for example, saying, I am great at time management, it is very important you back it up with an example. So just don't throw out words there that may be like, oh, this can be considered a strength. Let me just say it. No. You need to tell them a specific example as to where you used that strength. So when you're answering your questions, using a model called STAR model is very important. STAR basically gives you the structure. So S stands for the situation where you used it. T stands for task. Basically, what was the task that you used this for? A is what kind of actions you took, and R is basically the results, what happened. So when I'm talking about a strength, if I say, well, I am really great at time management, one of the situations where I handled multiple projects, even though there were very few, they were very near, like the deadlines were very near, my task was to make sure that I was handling all these projects with a lot of quality and quantity. And my action was to make sure that I divided my time amongst these projects in a way that the result was to actually give these projects out in a timely manner. So that way, you're structuring your answer. You're not beating around the bush, because that's what happens a lot of times, right? Like, we're thinking so much that we throw every little word or phrase out there. So it will help you not beat around the bush, and it will also make sure that you're hitting the right points for the right questions. And with your areas of improvement, how do you answer that question? Again, the same way, using the STAR model. But one thing that I have noticed as a recruiter is, if I'm asking you, hey Vikas, can you tell me your area of weakness or improvement? He'll just say, I can't work on multiple projects. Blank silence, right? As a recruiter, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear what you are doing to improve on that. That's the reason why it's known as an area of improvement. You need to give a strategy associated with that. For example, if Vikas says I cannot work well on multiple projects, but I am trying to make sure I'm allocating time to these different projects so that I can finish them in a timely manner and still work simultaneously. So that is what is important. You need to give a strategy with your area of improvement, because that is going to show the recruiter that you are not only aware about it, but you're actually working on it. So it's very, very important that whenever you talk about your strengths or areas of improvement, back it up with an example, and also give out strategies or approaches you're using to make sure that your area of improvement is taken into consideration. uh, one common mistake everyone makes: do not use the same quality as your strength and weakness. That cannot be possible. Either it's your strength, either it's your weakness, right? You can't have that one thing for both, because then it comes across to the recruiter as, I think this person's confused. I think this person doesn't know what they're talking about, or this person's just not being real. Yeah, you have to be your honest self. So it's okay, every one of us do have strengths and areas of development, and it is good to talk about that along with strategies. And that's the reason going back to the SWOT analysis we spoke about in the very start is very helpful, because that's the model that's going to help you guys understand how you can answer these introductory questions. Next is what made you interested in this field or area? Well, just don't say, well, my dad said it is a great money making field, so let's go into it. Don't give answers like that. Give answers where you're genuinely sparking that interest, or you genuinely feel like this is one specific area within my field that really interested me. It could be as simple as I was just very fascinated with robots, so I wanted to come into this field. It's okay. It is just something that's related to your own personal experience versus just giving a very vague answer. Again, what motivates you? How do you deal with stress? These are questions that are all introductory questions, because they want to know how you're going to work under pressure, how are you going to work under stress, because they know the organization's culture. So that actually ties back to what Chintan was asking um, previously in the conversation. These are the reasons why you need to ask questions, because that's going to help you understand, do the way I deal with stress really going to help me cope up with these organizations culture, is going to help me cope up with the organization's structure, the projects, things like that. So these are the reasons why they ask you such questions. uh, can you explain these gaps on your resume? These gaps meaning work experience gaps. A lot of times it happens because we are international. If you're working, you cannot actually study. I mean, if you're studying, you cannot work off campus. And so it's okay. You can always let them know, hi, I was like studying or doing XYZ reason. Give it a legit reason. Don't make up anything, because let me tell you, recruiters can come to know about such things. So make sure that you are answering with full transparency. Next is professional questions. So basically, like talking about your skills, your developments, your accomplishments. What is your work style? Very, very, very important. You should know what your work style is. It's a very common question that all recruiters have started asking of lately, because they want to know how you will contribute to the team. So you can, work style meaning what? Can anyone say, if a recruiter asks you that question, what would you say? Anyone? How would you answer that question? Anyone?
To be honest, I'll just ask a clarifying question on what exactly is meant by work style, because I'm really not aware of what it is.
Okay, that's a great starting point. So yes, you can ask clarifying questions. So work style basically means I like to work on a single project first. I am someone who likes working on multiple projects, or I am someone who sets deadlines for my projects. I like to work with trackers. I have project trackers for myself to make sure I'm hitting deadlines. So those are the I would say characteristics that define your work style. Work style can also include, I love working in a team, but I am someone who's very productive when I'm working individually. Those are kind of your work styles. Do you work better in a team? And it's okay if you work better in a team and not individually. That's not a bad thing. Okay, that's not something that recruiters are going to deduct points for. But at the same time, you need to let the recruiters know, I can work both in a team and individually. Yeah, it shouldn't be like coming across as, oh, this person works great only in teams. How are they going to manage an individual project? So that's what it means by work style. Like, what do you do to make sure you're productive at work, basically? But that's another common question that they ask. What is your ideal working environment is also another question they ask. Now, a lot of companies write that they are a very fast paced environment, right? And a lot of times we say, maybe that's my weakness. I cannot, area of improvement, I cannot work in a fast paced environment. It's okay to say that, but it is not okay just to say, I cannot work in a fast paced environment, blank. No, it is important to say, I cannot work in a fast paced environment, but this is the reasons that I do, and hence I will be able to cope up with it or adapt to it. So these are the kind of questions they ask. Company related questions, why should we hire you? This was another common question in the Google form. Going back to the elevator pitch, that's going to be your selling point. Why should we hire you? This is the reason why you should hire me, because my strengths are different from the others. Yeah, so it goes back to the elevator pitch. It is very important that you prepare your elevator pitch. Why are you interested in this company? Another question that I think came in the Google form. Read the company's mission and vision. It's very important. You should know what the company is doing or stands for, and that's going to help you answer this question. Yeah, I am very interested in, uh, for example, uh, developing X amount of robots because the company's vision is to actually make robots for healthcare industry, right? So making sure that you're tying it back to the company's mission and vision is very important. That's going to be a very strong foundation for you to actually answer that question. Why are you interested in this company? That also goes back to someone writing it in the chat, that reading about the company is going to help. So it's going to help. A lot of times we want a job just because we want a job, right? Maybe we do not agree with the company's mission and vision, but it is still important for you to figure out projects or look at the LinkedIn page, website, to see one specific project or service that they are working in which is of interest to you, and that's going to help you answer this question. I am very interested in the company's technology team, and that's why I want to work in this company, because I am someone who's creative, who loves designing, and hence I stand out from other applicants. So being very convincing, sounding very convincing is important. uh, there was another question about salary expectations. Again a very common question, right? Every recruiter would ask you that. It is very important that you research what is the base rate, what is the minimum someone can earn in your field, right? So if someone with absolutely no degree can earn $35,000 a year, for example, with you having 5 years of experience and a master's degree, can definitely earn way more than that person, correct? So you need to know what is your worth. If you don't know what your worth is, you will never be able to have a negotiating conversation with the recruiter. But that does not mean you give them skyrocket prices. Yeah, you cannot. If you have a master's degree and 10 years of experience and you're applying for a manager role, you cannot ask the recruiter to give you vice president salary. They are definitely going to be like, sorry, there's no way we'll be able to match you. So to answer that question, you need to be very honest. If you're someone who's expecting $70,000 a year, yes, you need to let the recruiters know that this is what I'm looking for. Can you see if you can match me with this? They're always going to come back with a negotiation price, but that's where you need to be more confident in saying this is what my worth is, because this is my experience and this is the kind of degree I hold. So it's very important that you're very honest and transparent about the salary expectations, because at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to be receiving that. You're the one who's going to be staying in that role for X amount of years, and so it's important that you actually get what you want. So be very honest with salary expectation conversations, and make sure you are not giving them skyrocket prices. And you can do that by researching the, I would say, the range of your salary on Glassdoor, on Onet. Onet is a very good resource there where you can see, I would say, salary expectations. You can also talk to other people in the same field, right? So it goes back to networking. Talk to other people and see what's a good range about giving them that salary expectation. And behavioral questions. Now, these are the most important questions, guys. Like, this is something that the recruiters will, I would say, give you maximum points on. Why? Because they're trying to see if you are fit for the job, fit for the organization, and fit for the team. These are the three things they actually see from behavioral questions. So I think there was another question on the Google form that said, what do the interviewers look for when not talking about technical questions? Behavioral questions basically reflects your personality. So they are trying to gauge your personality. They are trying to see what do you do in certain situations and how you're going to handle it. These questions can be very well answered with the STAR model that we'll be talking about, which is situation, task, action, results. For example, the very first question here is like, tell me about a time when you had to make a difficult decision. Now this is how you can answer it with the STAR model. So the situation was, I had to make a difficult decision between, for example, two projects. The task in both those projects were to complete a report for the CFO. Yeah, my action was to tell my manager, hey, I feel like this report is more important for submission because it's going to give us XYZ data. The result was I completed that task before, or that project before going on to the next one. So it's on you how you, it can be any difficult decision. It doesn't have to be professional. It can also be personal. Yeah, they're not looking for whether you're giving a professional example or a personal example. They're looking for how you handle them. What is your personality? That's what's important from these questions. That's what they're trying to gauge. So all of these questions actually can be answered in STAR model format. And that's the reason why this method is very, very, very important. Like, learn it on the back of your mind. Trust me, it's going to help you all, no matter whether you are interviewing for an internship, a job, or opening your own company. This particular model is really, really, really helpful, and it is going to benefit you a lot because all your answers will be extremely structured, and that's what recruiters look for. You need to have a structured approach. Next is quick tips. Okay, make sure that you're using keywords from the job description when you're submitting your resume. This has been spoken about during the resume event, so go back to the resume event to check it out. Then the other thing is, ask recruiters questions, managers questions, talk to them about next steps. Just don't say, okay, bye. Ask them, so when can I hear back from you? They'll give you a rough estimate. So always ask them about the next steps. And we've spoken about why we need to ask recruiters questions, right? So I'm not going to go there. Another thing is, please send recruiters thank you note. Don't send them a thank you email. No one wants to read an email. They'll delete it. When I get thank you emails after I interview, I delete them because I don't want to like sit and read words on my screen when I'm already doing that 24/7. So give them thank you notes or e-cards. Now there are various different ways of sending them e-cards, various different sites from where you can send them. Make sure you're sending them e-cards. According to research, 80% of the recruiters who are thanked, they remember you more often than someone who will not send them a thank you note at all. So make sure that you're sending them that. Second is, these are some of the email templates that I have written down for sending them when you are actually sending them a thank you email. I will be sending a PDF on this to everyone who's attended the event today so that you'll have it while you're preparing for your interview. But this is a important thank you email you can send. And then how you actually send up a follow-up email in case if they have not yet gotten back to you, right? So send them a follow-up email, I would say at least leaving 2 weeks. Don't send them a follow-up email in 2 days. Take 2 weeks before they can actually make a hiring decision for you, right? So send them a follow-up email after 2 weeks at least. Next is questions to ask the recruiters. Very important. Again, I'm going to be sending this out, so don't worry that you might not have the questions, but just to go over them, like ask them about their experience working at the company. What makes them what makes them so excited to be a part of the company? What's the company's culture? Now the company's culture can have a lot of different things, right? It could be, well, the company allows only vacation time once a month, right, or once a year. You never know. So those kind of things is very important for you to know before you make a decision, especially because we are international students and professionals, so we need to know certain things. Asking them a question about, does your company give sponsorships, especially if you are someone who's applying for an internship, or on OPT. Very important to ask these questions so that you know whether this is a company you would want to be stuck with for the rest of your career, right? So ask them those questions. Ask them what is the company's mission and vision. It helps a lot with the recruiters just understanding that this person's done their research, this person knows what they are talking about and why they want to be a part of the company. And then obviously you're talking about next steps, very important. um, Questions to hiring managers. Now, questions you ask recruiters is going to be very different from the questions you ask your hiring manager. Hiring manager can be someone who is going to be your direct manager, your supervisor, or the director of that team, right? So, with the hiring manager, you're asking more so about the position, the team, and things that they are going to expect from you. Yeah. So, for example, asking the hiring manager about how are going to what are going to be my day-to-day responsibilities. Very important. Asking the hiring manager, what are your expectations of me as an interviewee? Very important. Asking them about teamwork. Does the team work on projects individually or in a team? That's going to help you understand whether your strengths and areas of development are going to be taken into consideration when you join the team. Yeah. How, what is the team's culture? Organizations culture and teams culture are very different in a lot of organizations. Within the team you might have a supervisor who's very friendly, very informal, but the overall organization's culture is very formal. You never know. So making those differentiations important. Now these questions tell the hiring manager that this person truly wants this role, wants to fit in with the team, is going to do her or his best to make sure that they are part of the team and not someone who's going to be a liability. So these kind of questions help gauge hiring managers personality. They basically help, it helps hiring managers understand that, oh, this person's personality is really nice, they will definitely fit in with my team. So understanding their perception on these questions is very important. And then again, you need to send them a thank you email as well. If you do have their email address, it's not a compulsion, but definitely sending a thank you email to recruiters is very important, because of the fact that they are the ones who tell you whether you're going to go from step 1 to 2. If you've not impressed the recruiters, like we all know, we will not be going ahead in the process. So until you're not ahead in the process, it's always important to be that person who's always at the back of the mind in the recruiter of the recruiter. So it's very, very important that you are constantly being noticed, constantly someone who's, but not being pushy, right? So there's a difference, there's that boundary to be maintained. um, I know I threw a lot of information out there for you all very quickly, but these were some of your questions that came in, and I think I have answered most of them. But if you all do have any other questions, you all can let me know now. I'll stop sharing my screen. But more questions. Any more questions?
Hey Darshita, I have a question. Sometimes when we are going through the interviews, they have these common question that it's been only 1 year with your current employer and you're switching the employer already. So what's the guarantee that you won't be doing the same thing with us? And if we hire you right now, can you transfer all your work in 2 weeks and come to join our company, or are you gonna be taking 2 months or 1 month to train someone else in place of yours? So how to tackle those situations? Because if we say no, we're gonna come to your company, show the excitement, and we're gonna join your company, then that will show that we could do the same thing with their company. And if we do go otherwise, then it's gonna also hurt my chance of getting the next round. So how to tackle that one?
That's a good question. So this basically is a question of loyalty, right? That's what they're trying to gauge. Are you going to be loyal to the company or not? Right now, how you can handle the situation is saying, I am looking to constantly grow. The company that I was previously working at had this stagnation point where I was not able to grow, I wasn't able to develop further as a professional, and hence I want to switch my company. Yeah. Now, what's the guarantee? There's no guarantee for anything. What if tomorrow, like, it's the same thing for the recruiters. The recruiter might be like interviewing you today, tomorrow that person might be leaving. You never know. So for you to take that answer into consideration, you can just say that to be honest, I don't think there is any guarantee, because I am someone who loves learning, who loves growing, who always wants to do my best in the profession I am in. And hence, the reason why I'm interviewing for this company is because I know this company is going to help me do that. So put it on the company, say that I am in this company because there is no chance I'm going to leave, because this company is giving me what I want.
Right, that's a good answer. Thank you. Yeah, that helps.
Mm-hmm.
To have your conversation around your thought process. Since and
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question actually, Darshita.
Yeah.
So there is a question that has been difficult to prepare for, which goes something like, what was a time when you had a disagreement with someone and how did you deal with that situation? Now, if I didn't have anything like that, should I make up something while preparing for it, or should I just simply honestly say no, that I've been thankful in my work life and my studying life that I have not faced such a situation? Is that the right way to answer, or how would you go?
Yes. So that's basically a question that I already have in the question bank that says, tell me about a time when dealing with conflicts, right? Or like you said, a difficult
Right.
situation. Yes, that's the right way to go. You can just let them know, I have been very thankful to be working with people who have understood my work style, have been very collaborative, have been very cooperative. However, if I do come across someone who has a different personality than me, or has a different work style or communication style as compared to me, I would most likely do this based on my personality. So you do not have to make up a situation, but you can always share, this is my personality and this is how I can or would deal with conflicts. Does that
Okay.
help?
Yes, yes, definitely. Thank you.
Hmm. Anyone else, any questions?
Hi Darshita, this is Rishita here.
Yeah.
So I had a quick question. Like now, since a lot of interviews are happening virtually, so if you have any specific tips or your expectation as a recruiter, like about the background or about the dressing or anything else, like let's say like about maintaining eye contact over the video, so something like that. If you could just give us some quick tips on that, so we can address those.
Yeah, 100%. So that's a good question. One thing that I really expect when I am interviewing individuals is they are professionally dressed. I do not like seeing someone sitting on their bed in PJs, sipping a coffee, and telling me that they are interested in working in a company. That would be like a big turn off for me as a recruiter, right? So being professionally dressed. When you are actually interviewing online, the one thing that recruiters look at, and this is again something my roommate was telling me because she's a recruiter as well, that they want to see, would you act exactly like the way you are acting virtually in person, right? So you are actually creating that impression in front of them that this is exactly who I am as an individual in person as well. So dressing appropriately, very important. um, Keeping eye contact, like you mentioned, making sure you're not distracted. Make sure that you are sitting in a room where your eye contact is not shifting from this to this, because that tells a lot about, oh my god, this person like has 10 other people in the room, maybe they're prompting her, maybe she's really not prepared, I don't know what's going on, kind of thing. Other thing, if you're someone who's into writing notes, for example, if the recruiter says something and you're busy writing, let the recruiter know, hey, just to let you know, I am someone who likes taking notes. So in case if I'm looking away from my screen, that's because I want to take some of the important points you're talking about, right? That shows a recruiter that you're not on the phone. That tells a recruiter that you're paying attention to what that they are saying, that you're being attentive, right? So making sure that you tell them about every little action that you're doing, because it's virtual. So it's important. Obviously, you don't have to tell them, no, I'm going to sip my coffee now. Like, all that is obviously not required, but important minuscule actions that can give a certain impression. Because virtually, right now, like, for example, if my camera, and obviously like having a camera on, very important. Right now, like in this conversation, we do have a lot of individuals whose cameras are off, right? If that same thing happened during an interview, I would be like, maybe this person's really not paying attention. I don't think this person might be folding laundry while interviewing with me, right? So making sure your camera is on is very important. And then being prepared, like the what we were talking about throughout this conversation, being prepared is very, very important, especially when you're virtual, because you have 10,000 things going on your computer, right? So making sure that you know certain things, print out documents if you have to. That would be much more beneficial than having a resume pulled up on your desktop. So printing it out is more helpful than doing that. So yes, those are the things. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Like some really good tips that I got from that. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Anyone else?
At some point,
I have a point to add and a question as well. Sometimes people, like students, take management rounds light, very light. They don't even concentrate on preparing for it. So, Darshita, what do you have to add on it? Like how important these management rounds are and what to prepare?
So here's the thing. This is my clarifying question to you. What are management rounds?
If a senior VP or director is taking your interview, they don't have any much detail about your technical depth, but they will ask you about behavioral questions. So, how students should prepare for it, and how important it is.
So this goes back to what I was talking while I was presenting about behavioral
Mhm.
questions, that
Mhm.
you, no matter who you're interviewing with, whether it's a mock interview, whether it's an
Yeah.
interview with the VP, director, CEO of the company, or a recruiter, it is very important that you're answering these behavioral questions through the STAR model that we discussed, because behavioral questions are something that talks a lot about your personality. It talks a lot about who you are as a person, what you may or may not do when you are on the job, when you are working with the company. So taking those questions lightly basically means you are kind of decreasing your chances of getting that job by 80%.
True.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Questions, concerns, thoughts? No one?
I have a question if no one has anything.
Okay.
So I find myself as a person who can talk a lot, and it's very tough to keep me silent. I'm the opposite of the person who would give an answer in one sentence. Is there any time limit to giving an answer, especially personality questions, or how did you manage this in the past or something? Like don't keep talking forever. I know that, but any timelines?
I would say try limiting your answers to a minute each, right? Because the interview can be for an hour or 30 minutes. In that 30 minutes, you also have to make sure you're listening to the recruiter as well, right? So make sure that you're answering those questions very to the point, one liner each, in terms of 1 minute to one question. In your mind, even if it is lasting for 30 seconds, it's fine. No one wants to know how much in depth you can go. Everyone wants to know more. So how clearly are you articulating yourself to be able to make sure that I'm convinced that Vikas is the best for this role? So that should be your end goal, because of which try answering every question in a minute.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
I think we are good.